Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar From Risks to Resilience, Securing OT and ICS with Intelligent Automation. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here and to spend the next few minutes with us. My name is Julian Jurado, and I will be your host for today's session. Today, we look at how intelligent automation can help security teams gain better visibility across their environments, detect suspicious activity faster, reduce the time it takes to investigate threats, and respond more effectively. And we will see how Seceon can play a role in this process by bringing security monitoring, analytics, threat detection, and automated response together in a more intelligent approach to cybersecurity. So today we are going to look at how we can move beyond simply managing cybersecurity risks and start building true operational resilience. We are also very pleased to have Tom Ertel with us today. Tom brings extensive experience in cybersecurity, and he will be sharing valuable insights and real-world perspective throughout the session. So I encourage everyone to stay engaged, participate in the discussion, and feel free to submit your question through the session. Thank you again for being here. Welcome, and let's get started.
Thank you very much for the intro. Yeah, Tom Ertel here. I'm with Seceon Incorporated. I've been here for 8 years, 9 years now. You can see from the gray everywhere that I've been around a while. So as Julian mentioned, I have a lot of industry experience, not just in security, but in networking and telephony and so forth. So today, as we said, we're going to be talking about the OT, IoT risk landscape. And I'm going to show you a platform that Seceon has that Pholus uses to actually help you do monitoring, detection, alerting, and then taking action in that environment. But let's first talk a little bit about IoT, OT. So first of all, the attackers, have gone after banks and finance companies and so forth to do ransomware, to get money, but they're increasingly starting to attack OT environments for a couple of reasons. One, you can, from a state actor perspective, you could actually go and disrupt power flow. You can disrupt water. You can, there's been attacks on water pipelines and power plants and so forth. But if you think about from a ransom perspective, the leverage you get by shutting down, let's say electricity to a section of a city or something, or shutting down water access, or even any other utilities, very quickly governments are going to want to respond to that and stop that attack, right? Because when you ransomware a company for its data or for pure money, they typically are going to try to delay that payment, and they're going to try to get their backups back up and running. So there's ways to potentially get around that attack. But when you have an OT environment where you're actually impacting human lives, right? Let's say a hospital, right? There's resuscitators, or there's oxygen machines, or whatever it might be that people are living on, that can be attacked and shut down by cyber attackers. The leverage there becomes much higher, right? Because the need to respond becomes much more quick. So, that's one of the reasons why OT is becoming, another heavy attack vector for the cyber thieves. Also, more and more companies are starting to have, IoT devices, right? So it's sensors, cameras, your HVAC controls, and so forth. So that's another way for attackers to get into your environment. It's not just through now your firewall, your endpoints. They're actually finding other ways in. We've actually had customers who had cameras, that had gotten malware on them. They're actually now trying to do exfiltrations, right? And so it's important that you have a platform, you have a solution that can actually monitor all activity. Right. I mean, one of the popular pieces of security solution right now is called EDR, right? Endpoint detection and response. It's a piece of software from some of your major players in the industry. That's important. That's very important functionality, and you need to have it. But from our perspective, it's not sufficient, right? You don't run EDR on a camera, right? So, or on a printer, and those devices do get infiltrated, and then they are used to actually exfiltrate or ransomware companies. So the ability to see all traffic, right? Not just be monitoring your PCs and your laptops, but all traffic, information from all your assets is vital to being able to stop these these new attacks. Uh, so yeah, I think that's a good overview. And again, the IoT and OT, I won't say they're converging per se, but they're absolutely becoming more and more prevalent in many environments. And on top of that, you have environments like hospitals, like I said, and manufacturing sites and utilities who have both and need to be monitoring both because the attackers aren't just going to be going after their IT infrastructure anymore. They're going to be going after both. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about what Seceon, what Pholus can do to help you protect those environments. Okay, and let me find my share button here. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing what looks like a dashboard. Okay, so let me just go full screen here. Okay, so first thing is you want a platform, you want a solution that can let you monitor whether it's multiple locations, whether it's multiple customers. So, depending on your particular circumstances, you want to have the ability to not just have a single instance where you can only monitor. Let's say you're a hospital and you have, 10 locations. You want to have the ability to have all of them be monitored in a single platform and you to have quick access to all of those, right? So let's just use a hospital's case, right? Each one of these could be one of those particular hospitals, and you could get the monitoring. You can see the monitoring of that particular hospital in one of these boxes. This is again a quick visual snapshot. You can see how many events have been captured in that environment, how many threat indicators. That's a very important piece of what our platform does and what all platforms should do is detecting things going on in the environment that we call our incidents of compromise or threat indicators. A blacklisted site access, an IP scan, a privilege escalation, all things that your platform, your security solution should detect and then raise alerts on. Now, it's also important to note you don't want to raise an alert every time anything happens, right? That would wipe out your ability to actually keep up with things. You need something that's going to do some monitoring for you, cutting out false positives, only alerting when you have enough confidence that action needs to be taken. So again, each one of these is a particular instance, as I was saying, and then you can go into each particular, let's say this is again a hospital. I can go into that particular hospital, and now I can get details about what's going on in that hospital. All right. And we'll get to the OT specific stuff in a section here, but I want to give you a little high level snapshot. So here you're seeing, you know, how a security platform should work, how ours does work, right? It's showing you all the telemetry that it's collecting, right? So you're going to get all of your IT infrastructure, right? Your firewall, your Microsoft devices, wish you have EDR, whatever it might be. And then when you start to have OT infrastructure, that will start to show up here as well. Your controllers and your SCADA devices and so forth. You'll start to see the ingestion of telemetry from those devices. And here it's showing you in a specified period. I've specified 7 days. You can specify whatever period you want, but it's showing you that in 7 days, the platform has seen this much information, and that's a lot. 1.8 billion pieces of information. And it's seen 131 million threat indicators. So what does that mean? That means anything that potentially could be part of an attack. And it could start with something as simple as a failed login, right? So if someone's trying to break into an IoT device or an OT device or an endpoint, and they're basically, password spraying, they're just hitting it with, you know, you know, passwords. They have a program that's just constantly hitting it with passwords to try to break in, right? You know, All that would show up here in these threat indicators. It's vital that you have a solution that can keep track of all of those threat indicators without humans having to, detect them, remember them, track them, see if there's other things related, look across multiple platforms. It's important, and this is what we do. All of that is done inside the platform in real time in software. So you can see here 131 million things of potential compromise that were detected in 7 days. It is physically impossible for you to have enough humans to keep up with that, right? To one, detect it, correlate it, and then track it. So, you need something like this to be able to keep up with that. And then you generate alerts and so forth. So now let's get a little bit more detailed into OT. Okay, so here, just down, you can see all the functionalities of the platform. And one of them I'll probably come back to here is called autonomous SOC, where you can actually have the platform help you instead of you having to go in and look at all the details associated with an alert. The platform can help you do that. It can go and it can actually pull all that together. It can give you a description of what it's seen and what it thinks you need to do. Okay, so let's now go into, like I said, the OT section. Let's start with our dashboard. So an important point is everybody's pretty much familiar with IT, right? Firewalls, routers, switches, servers, endpoints. OT has a completely different set of infrastructure, right? So you've got, these things called PLCs, logic controllers, programmable logic controllers, RTUs, HMIs, all these different devices. You can see here that here's the vendors and here's what type of device it is, a SCADA device, which is a higher level command and control center. So first, you have to now have the ability to ingest the information coming from those devices, which is different, right? So that's an important piece that somebody has to have created those, let's call them parsers and or translators, so you can understand all that information and figure out what to do with it. Okay, so here you're seeing a bunch of different devices that information is being collected from. Here you can see it's showing you the different threat types that are being seen in the OT environment. So, IP recon, network access, objects access status, and so forth. Here, this is showing you the information, right? So all the different sources, what type of information they are here. You see Modbus and BACnet and so forth. So whatever is relevant in your particular OT environment, you would see here showing up here. Uh, you know, and then we map it into what's called the Purdue model, which is it's an industry standard definition for OT environments, right? It lays out 6 different levels of sort of mapping, right? So you have your physical level all the way up to your enterprise level, and in between control levels and supervisory controls and so forth. So it's just a way to define the hierarchy within an OT slash industry control system. And so here we're kind of showing you, at the different levels, down here at the physical layer, then the basic control, what we've seen, how many assets and so forth. So you're getting a nice clear mapping of, what's going on in your OT environment. Sorry. Here you can get an inventory of all the different devices. It'll take a second for this to populate. You can see the different protocols. But so now let's look at, so what does the platform do with that information, right? So we generate what are called alerts. Okay, so anytime the platform has seen enough, and an important point I'd like to highlight here is we have 3 levels of alerts: minor, major, critical. Minor alerts are by far the biggest number of alerts in the platform. Because anytime, let's just open one up here and take a look. So here we've seen 33 suspicious processes, right? Uh, that's not enough that the platform has decided it needs to tell you to do anything or it needs to do anything, but it's seen enough that it's watching, right? And let's go over here. I like to look at it this way. So you can see here, and this all happened today, but you can see here at 9 a.m. it saw some suspicious processes, and at 10 and so forth. And it'll keep adding over time. And you'll see minor alerts that can go on for weeks or months where it continues to see more and more activity, but it still doesn't believe it doesn't have enough confidence to say that this is actually an attack. Okay. So these are a very important part of the platform in that in many platforms or many people providing MDR services, humans have to do this, right? So you have to pay to have people detecting these suspicious processes, maybe taking a look at them, figuring out what you're going to do with them, and if you need action. Here, you don't have to worry about these. They're being watched for you in the background and only raised when they become relevant. So one of the things I also like to show is that every one of these, suspicious processes, the platform will go in and give you a very detailed summary. So I could go over here, I could open it up. It's going to give me, all the gory details of everything related to that. We've also added what we call our own agentic AI, where we can actually give you a nice human summary of that particular activity. So here, it's going to take a second here, but it's going to now take all the information in this threat indicator, and it's going to describe it for me, tell me what it means, and maybe make some recommendations if there's anything I should do. So this takes a couple of seconds here. You can see here we go. So here you see what's happening. So the EDR memory scanner detected a suspicious activity on this desktop, the affected processes. So you can do this, again, you can get this level of description for every alert and or threat indicator in the alert. Okay, it shows you the MITRE mapping and so forth. So just very transparent, the platform will show you whatever you want to see about any particular activity. But now let's go back to alerts, right? And let's see if we can find some OT related stuff. So let's go back to major alerts. And I happen to know that, here we go. There should be some of these. Okay, so these are OT alerts. Okay, so OT device trust violations. So let's just go in here and take a look. So we've seen, I always like to look this way. We've seen a lot of OC access status activity. And again, I'm going to use my Sarah AI to see what it thinks about this particular activity. Okay, so you can see here a Modbus control system is recurring these two devices, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So again, it's giving me a nice description of what it saw there. And if we go back to the alert now, so let's see here. I can zoom in a little bit. You can see right here, right away, it saw some status activity that it thought was malicious enough that it's telling you have to take action. Okay, so let me just try to show you again. We don't have a huge OT infrastructure, so the alerts are not as representative of what a real alert would look like. So if I go back and I remove this, I just want to show you what an alert might look like. All right, so if I go here, look at a malware infected host. Well, I'm going to find a little more complicated one for you here. Give me a second here. I can actually go look for any type of particular host. So I'm going to look for a malware infected host. I'm going to open up my window a little bit. Go to 60 days. Okay, let's see if we can open it up here. So if we look here, so this is, again, what an alert looks like is high-level description, a mapping of all of the activities that we're seeing into something called the MITRE ATT&CK framework. That's a very industry standard framework that basically helps you track what stage you are in an attack, right? So when you start over here, reconnaissance, right? This is the lowest level where someone's trying to maybe do an IP scan or just looking around your environment, all the way up to exfiltration or impact. If you get here, now you could be in trouble, right? If the exfiltration has happened, the data is already on the way out the door. And then, here's what the impact is. So any alert, OT, IT, will be in this structure, right? And it's going to show you all of the activities that were related to that particular alert. But an important point here is you can see in June, okay, this alert, if I open this up a little bit. So on 6:30, two suspicious processes were seen, right? And you can see here it says minor alert. Very low confidence score. We don't think this is actually an attack, but it's something we're going to watch, right? And again, this is relevant for OT and IT. Now, sometime in July, so here you see on 7/1, it saw some suspicious processes. On 7/2, same thing. So it's going to keep track of everything it remembers. Some days it didn't see anything. Here on 7/4, 4th of July, I guess the attackers were off. So no activity. But it just keeps checking every day. It keeps adding anything it sees. Here you're going to see right here on 7/8, it saw some potential exploits. So it's probably those that push this over the edge to say, okay, this is now an alert. Let's just keep zooming in here. Right here you can see. So these two potential exploits are what caused it to say, okay, now I think this is an attack. And here you can see there was a port scan, right? A scan is typically a malicious activity. And if it's something that this host has never done before, right? That's part of our behavioral modeling where we'll learn what's typical for a host. And if we haven't seen it before and all of a sudden we see it, now it becomes more suspicious. So here you can see a single port scan was detected, 11 to across 11 different hosts. So, it's out looking for something. So this is what gave the platform the confidence to say, okay, we believe that now this host is now under attack. And in this host, in an OT environment, that could be a PLC, it could be any device that's doing things that are abnormal. Okay. So that's sort of how alerts work. Part of the platform is the ability to take action on those alerts, right? So I mentioned something called autonomous SOC. So this is where the platform can actually now go look at that alert and apply agentic AI. It's not Claude, it's not Anthropic, but it's our own version where it can go look at those alerts and say, okay, yep, this looks like a false positive, you don't have to worry about it, or no, this looks like a real attack and you need to take action. So if I just want to show you sort of how this works. So I can come here and open one of these up. And again, this is software in our platform acting like analysts, right? So if I open this up, we have an investigation lead, right? We have agents that are looking at network activity, agents that are looking at endpoint activity and trying to decide, okay, does this look like an attack or not? And then we have an analyst who looks at all the results and says, okay, this is what we recommend, right? So if we just open up one of these agents, I just want to show you how this works. I think it's still working here. So here you can see that each one of these agents tries to look at this fairly, right? So it has what we call a prosecutor and a defender. The prosecutor is trying to prove that this is an alert, right? He's doing everything in his power to say, yep, this is something you need to worry about. The defender is saying, no, this is not an alert. Here's why you shouldn't really worry about it. So, trying to be neutral, and not, give you a fair assessment. Then it goes over to the chief analyst, and comes up with a conclusion, and that's what we saw up here on the decision. This software is trying to help you analyze that alert, give your SOC analyst basically the information it needs to make a decision. And then you can actually then go take action. So one other thing I want to show you here, if I can get my response back. Just give me 1 second to refresh this. I apologize. So the one thing I wanted to show you was, so we sort of walked through the process of detecting information, raising a minor alert, turning it into a major alert, which is now we have to take action, right? The autonomous SOC, which looked at it and said, it analyzed it and tried to give you a recommendation. But now we have something called SOAR, right? So this is security orchestration and response. This is important functionality in that this is where you can say, okay, so if I get an alert, what do I want to happen, right? What steps do I want taken? So if we open up one of this is somebody started one already, right? So these are very easy to use drag and drop interface. So this is for compromised credentials. So the first thing they did was they said, I want to assign this to someone. So you dragged over that box. You can see over here it says assign, dragged it over. Let's say I want to notify somebody, right? So I can drag this over, connect it up, and now I go over here and I can put in what I want to send to who and what I want to say. All right. And again, I'm just trying to show you how simple this is to create these very powerful playbooks that will be executed once you get an alert. So you can also in here, you can take actions, right? And again, I apologize. I don't have an OT playbook at the moment. I'll get one made, but you can come in here and you can say for this particular type of attack, let's say instead of compromised credential, it was that one of the PLCs was compromised. In this case, you go into what's called your identity system, and you would say, I want to block this user, right? So, or in the OT environment, I'd say I want to block that controller. Okay, so you would set up a playbook for that particular activity. You could also go out and say, in an IT environment, a firewall might be relevant. So I want to go and I want to add a firewall. Okay, so I want to go in here. I want to basically choose my option, and I want to block this IP. In a OT environment, maybe you want to go out to your SCADA system, and you basically want to say, okay, I want to take these actions, right? I want to do this with my control infrastructure. So again, sort of to wrap up the picture here is IT and OT are becoming very much converged, and even in just pure IT companies, you're going to start to have devices that are more OT centric or IoT devices, cameras and so forth, that are absolutely potential sources of attack and you need to be protected from. So the ability to have your one platform, and that's another thing maybe I didn't highlight enough here. Instead of having to have a different OT platform and a different email platform and a different, EDR platform, if you could have it all in one place, right? If you could go to one platform and have all your data coming in, all your monitoring be going on, all your alerting, and then all of your responses happening out of that one platform. I mean, hopefully it's obvious that that should save you a lot of money in terms of resources and tools, right? So again, with the convergence of these two environments, it's becoming more and more important that you have what you need to be able to detect those threat actors now coming into your, for hospitals, it's, life, the ability to protect, the machines that are keeping people alive, an iron lung or an oxygen machine, or whatever it might be. Uh, there actually are machines now doing automatic dosage, distribution, right? So there's a machine that's sending you the medicine you need, or whether it's, treatment. an attacker can alter that, right? They can get in there, hack into that machine and alter that and potentially even kill people, right? So it's becoming vital that you not only protect your IT infrastructure, but you protect your OT infrastructure. And hopefully we showed you that, here's, with our partner Follows, we're providing the ability to protect your entire environment, IT, OT, IoT, all of it, detect the activities, monitor them properly, watch them, look for the point where they're actually to the point where you need to take action, and then let you go take that action either automatically, or you can basically say, no, I want a human to look at these, because they're, maybe the ones that are life altering, right? You want to have a human go in and take a look at it. So you can define all that here in this section. You can say, I want humans to look at certain things, but other things, if it's just my, like a camera or a printer, I want to have automatically go take the action. I don't need a human to look at it. Okay, I think that's my overview.
Tom,
Again,
we got a
we'll
good
open it up to,
question. We have a question. How
sure.
many integrations do you have with IT and OT vendors? Great question about can you talk a little bit about how we're agnostic? We work with, over 800 integrations.
Yeah, let me pull something up here. So this is just our website, and there's a section on it where you can come here for connectors. And here you're going to see, and it's well over 1,000 now, right? Just anything and everything. I don't know that we've updated this yet with, you saw a bunch of the OT devices that we captured data from the Siemens and so forth. I don't know if this has been updated with those yet. Uh, but here you can see there's just probably more than you can consider. Uh, and and we will anything that we don't support, we don't support. Let's say you as a customer or you have a customer who has a new device that we don't support. We have teams that's all they do. We're continually adding, let's say 3, 4, 5 a week new integrations for devices that a customer has that we didn't currently have support for. So adding new ones is part of our plan, part of our process. So hopefully I gave you some confidence that we spend a lot of time working on integrations to make sure that whatever the customer you know, wants to ingest data from and be part of their security protection, we'll cover it.
Here's another question, Tom. Great job. Can Seceon monitor legacy OT devices without installing agents?
Yeah, so the way we monitor OT devices, so most of those you can't put an agent on, right? So we do what we call is snooping, where the data that's flowing in an environment goes through a device, let's call it like a switch that we will then snoop and we'll see all of the traffic that's flowing, right? So devices that can provide, let's call it log-like information, we will collect, but otherwise we're going to be monitoring all the activity out of every device through that information flow through the environment. So no agent can be loaded on most of them.
Here's another great question. Once Seceon catches a potential threat, how much of a response happens automatically versus needing an analyst to jump in?
Okay, so I kind of answered that, but
You, you
let's go
did, you
back
did,
through.
but that's a great question.
Yeah, no, but yeah. So when you get an alert, right, you can, I sort of showed you here, you can come in here and you can uh, say, okay, I want to manually remediate, right? So I come in here and I select my remediators. It'll show me what it's going to do. Again, I'm showing you IT centric, but because we don't have a lot of OT remediators and activity right now this is our in-house environment, and I can't show you a customer's. I apologize. So, but here it's showing you what it's going to do, and you say update. That's manual, right? But as I showed you through the autonomous SOC, you can actually go and I guess I didn't specifically show you, but you can set up what we call auto remediation. You come in here and define an alert type, right? Zero-day malware. You just go through and you set up everything in this section. I want for all majors, I want to select my remediators. In an OT environment, it's going to be basically the ability to maybe block any more access to that controller or shut it down. So you select those devices. Here some of the OT activity would show up here. Instead of quarantine the host, maybe it would be shut down the host or shut down the device. You can set a schedule. And when you've completed all this, I'm not going to actually set a schedule here, but you basically save this, and now that type of alert and those remediators and that time frame will happen automatically, right? As soon as the alert is raised, it'll go out and take those actions. And then I was kind of showing you that with our SOAR here, where you can actually say, again, all of these actions, not just, shutting down the uh, the activity, but maybe notifying the customer. All of this stuff is going to happen automatically. Maybe I wasn't clear there. I apologize. SOAR is basically saying, as soon as I get this alert, okay, I get a trigger, I get this alert, all of these things are going to happen. Send the email, assign it to somebody. Like I showed you, I added a Active Directory activity. Through these playbooks, that's all automatic.
Yeah, and working with Pholus for over 3 years now, they have a team. So I would default to them. They have a team of SOC and security engineers that are very familiar with the platform that can assist you if that's the approach you want to take. In other words, the industry, we're all really running toward an autonomous SOC and AI, but there's needs to be eyes on glass at certain points. I think that was one of the questions that was a good question. Do we rely so much on
Yeah,
technology
so
as opposed to
let me respond to that a little bit, Chris. We're not saying you don't need humans, okay? We're trying to minimize the number of humans you need because that's cost and time, right? Humans, it would take a longer period of time to one, put all that information together and correlate it and say, yeah, this looks like an attack. It would take humans much longer than it would take the platform's going to do it within, milliseconds or seconds. So we're not saying you don't need humans, but ideally you're going to need less of them, right? And maybe they don't need to have as many experts. Maybe you have one expert and a handful of mid-level people, and the platform is helping you, supplement that by it doing a lot of the work. So you need to have some humans, in some cases, you're going to always want a human maybe to look at the alert before activity is taken. Again, that's where this autonomous SOC comes in, where it will actually help you. Again, if I come back here and I pick a case, it's going to make some recommendations, right? So here's, what happened, key evidence, and then if we come over here to response actions, here's what it's going to recommend that you do, right? So it's going to give you help to say, let's do all of these things. All right. Anything else?
Okay, I think we don't have more questions in the Q&A section. So thank you, Tom, for your valuable insights, and thank you to everyone who joined us today for this webinar. Hope you found this session very useful and gain better understanding how Seceon and Pholus technology can help you to protect your environments, OT or IT environments. And thank you again for being with us. Have a great day, everyone.